must recognize that this violence isn't random. It is a reflection of deeply rooted, internalized homophobia, queerphobia, and transphobia that impacts all of our communities.
This is an individual who was because he was gay, and because the man who him did not want anyone to find out that he was in a relationship with him or that he had sex with other men. This body was the worst body I have ever seen.
This is 20-year-old Niasir Johnson, a young gay man from Philadelphia who was killed by his closeted partner in fear of him revealing the truth publicly. In the early morning hours of February 17, 2022, police responded to reports of a burned body discovered along a secluded trail in Fairmount Park near Kelly Drive in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. When officers arrived, they found Niasir's body that had been deliberately set on fire, so badly burned that he could not be identified at the scene. Just hours earlier, Niasir had left home after requesting an Uber to go to meet the 23-year-old Kaylin Pratt. But unbeknownst to Niasir, he was walking in a trap, and he would never be able to come back home alive again. But before we get to how things turned fatal, we have to go back to the very beginning. This is the life and death of Niasir Johnson.
Sometimes I just force myself to go to sleep. My heart is so torn in so many pieces. I couldn't even see him. They wouldn't lay him to rest. I couldn't even see him.
Niasir Johnson was born in 2001 into a family that by every public account loved him deeply and unconditionally. From an early age, Niasir was surrounded by support. His family accepted him for who he was, fully and openly, including his identity as a gay young man. That acceptance shaped the way he moved through the world. He did not live in hiding. He did not shrink himself to make others comfortable. Those closest to him described him as warm, expressive, and emotionally open, a young man who laughed easily, smiled often, and carried himself with a quiet confidence that came from knowing he was loved at home. And that foundation mattered because it gave Niasir the courage to imagine a future beyond survival. He enrolled in community college shortly after graduating high school, beginning coursework in business and business administration. But business wasn't where his heart ultimately lay. According to his family, Niasir's real goal was to become a psychologist. He wanted to help people, specifically people in his own community who were struggling, marginalized, or misunderstood. He wanted to turn his own experiences into something meaningful, something that could ease someone else's pain. But just as Niasir was beginning to build toward that future, another part of his life was quietly pulling him in a very different direction. And that path would lead him straight into the orbit of someone who could not love him the way he deserved. That person was Kaylin Pratt. Kaylin Pratt was a few years older than Niasir, 23 years old at the time of the crime. He was from the Philadelphia area, living in West Philadelphia. On the surface, there was nothing about Kaylin that immediately set off alarms. He worked, he had a routine, he appeared, to outsiders, like a young man trying to find his place in the world. But beneath that exterior was a deep internal conflict, one that would come to define everything that followed. Unlike Niasir, Kaylin did not grow up in an environment of unconditional acceptance. His family background, as described through court proceedings and statements, was marked by rigid expectations around masculinity and identity. Being openly gay was not something he felt he could safely do. Instead, Kaylin lived a double life, one version of himself presented to family and the outside world, and another hidden behind closed doors. And it was in that hidden space that his relationship with Niasir existed. And for a while, that secrecy may have felt manageable. The two met not long before the events of February 2022. Details about exactly how they first connected were not fully disclosed, but what became clear was that their relationship moved quickly into something emotionally intimate. For Niasir, this wasn't something to be ashamed of. He shared details of the relationship with people close to him. He spoke openly. He wanted love that could exist in daylight. Kaylin, however, wanted the opposite. And that difference mattered more than either of them may have realized at the time. Because while Niasir saw their relationship as something real, something worth acknowledging, Kaylin treated it as something that could only exist in private. No public displays of affection, no shared photos, no acknowledgement beyond the walls of his home. At first, that boundary may have seemed like a compromise, but compromises built on fear don't stay balanced for long. What made their relationship especially complex was how different their emotional starting points were. Niasir had already done the hard work of self-acceptance. His family stood behind him. He was building a future that aligned with who he truly was. Kaylin, on the other hand, was still at war with himself, and instead of confronting that conflict, he tried to bury it. And Niasir became a living reminder of everything Kaylin was trying to hide. Still, there were moments when the relationship felt real. They spent time in private, sharing conversations, affection, and the kind of closeness that only exists when two people believe they're safe with each other. For Niasir, those moments mattered. He believed in the connection. But that belief was not shared equally, and slowly the cracks began to show. Kaylin's insistence on secrecy began to weigh heavily on the relationship. Niasir wanted more. Not extravagance, not spectacle, just acknowledgement, the freedom to exist as a couple without pretending the other didn't matter. And that tension didn't just stay between them, it began to shape Kaylin's behavior. And behind his facade, Kaylin was hiding something disturbing. Kaylin had a documented history of internal struggles long before Niasir entered his life. His internet search history would later reveal disturbing patterns, searches about psychopathy, violence, killing, and even necrophilia. These were not casual curiosities. They painted a picture of a mind grappling with dark impulses and unresolved identity conflicts. At the same time, Kaylin was deeply concerned with maintaining appearances. He did not want anyone, family, friends, co-workers, to suspect he was involved with men. Especially not with Niasir, who lived openly and unapologetically. And that fear grew louder with time. What exactly triggered Kaylin's breaking point remains unclear. Investigators would later explore several possibilities. Did Niasir want to make the relationship public? Did he want more commitment? Did he threaten to leave? Or was his very presence enough to destabilize the fragile world Kaylin had built around denial? The truth is, it may not have been one single moment. It may have been the accumulation of many. Because when fear is left unchallenged, it doesn't stay still. It escalates. And Kaylin's fear was no longer just about being seen. It was about losing control. Despite the growing tension, the relationship did not immediately end. They continued seeing each other, continued meeting in secret, continued pretending that love could exist in the shadows. But the imbalance between them only deepened. Niasir was moving forward with his life. His birthday was approaching. He had plans, goals, momentum. Kaylin, meanwhile, was spiraling inward, trapped between desire and self-loathing, between intimacy and terror. And at some point, Kaylin made a decision. Not a sudden one, not an impulsive one, a decision rooted in fear, secrecy, and a desperate need to erase the part of his life that threatened to expose the truth about who he truly was. But before the violence, before the fire, before the city would be left in shock, there was still one final meeting and one final choice that would turn love into something far more dangerous. Little did Niasir know, the relationship he believed could grow would instead become the setting for its darkest turning point. And when things finally went wrong, they would do so in a way no one could undo. In the early hours of February 17, 2022, just before dawn, Niasir Johnson left his home in West Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, believing he was heading toward another private visit with someone he still trusted. He requested an Uber, entered the back seat, and shared his destination, Kaylin Pratt's residence on the 4900 block of Oxford Street, a quiet residential stretch in West Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
At that moment, nothing outward suggested danger.
No raised voices, no visible struggle, just a routine ride toward a familiar address. But this time, the secrecy would not protect him. Within moments of Niasir stepping inside the Oxford Street home, Kylan Pratt shot him in the back of his neck. The gunshot was fatal. Niasir died there, inside the residence, before he could leave, before he could call for help, before he could understand that the person he loved had made a choice that could never be taken back. But the violence did not end there, and what Kylan did next revealed intent, not panic. Instead of calling for help, instead of fleeing, instead of surrendering, Kylan began to cover up what he just did. He wrapped Niasir's body and cloth inside the house. Kylan then attempted to clean the scene using chemicals in an effort to remove all traces of the killing. But no amount of bleach could undo what had already occurred. And then he moved the body. Sometime after the shooting, Kylan placed Niasir's body into the trunk of his car and drove north toward Fairmount Park, one of the largest urban park systems in the country. He traveled to a secluded trail near Kelly Drive, a roadway that runs alongside the Schuylkill River in Philadelphia. It was still dark when he arrived, and in that isolated area, far from the Oxford Street home, far from witnesses, far from the life Niasir had been building, Kylan doused Niasir's body with gasoline and set it on fire. The act was deliberate. The fire was meant to destroy evidence, to delay identification, to sever the connection between the victim and the man who killed him. But fire does not erase truth, it only delays it. Later that same day, on February 17, 2022, hikers walking along a remote trail in Fairmount Park near Kelly Drive made a horrifying discovery. They came across a badly burned human body lying off the path. It was immediately clear to responding officers that this was not an accident. The body was burned beyond recognition, so severely damaged that investigators could not identify the victim at the scene. And for days, that body would remain unnamed. Meanwhile, Niasir's family was searching. When Niasir failed to return home and could not be reached, his family reported him missing. They told police the last known detail they had. Niasir had taken an Uber in the early morning hours of February 17th and never came back.
Family and friends of a missing Philadelphia man are searching for answers tonight. They gathered earlier in Spring Garden hoping to spread the word about 20-year-old Niasir Johnson. The young man's grandmother tells Eyewitness News she reported him missing last week. Johnson's loved ones are begging for his safe return.
Niasir, all I want you to do is just come back home. Please just come back, please. Wherever you are, just come back. Just give me some relief, some comfort. I can't eat, I can't sleep. Please, just please come home, please.
Johnson's grandmother says police took her grandson's toothbrush and comb in efforts to collect DNA. Philadelphia police were not able to comment at this time if this case is potentially connected to the discovery of a body in the Brewery Town section of the city. That was last week. If you know anything about Niasir Johnson's case, you are asked to call Philadelphia police.
At first, there was no obvious connection between a missing 20-year-old man and a burned John Doe found in a park. But then, a single tip changed everything. Investigators received an anonymous tip pointing them toward Kylan Pratt and revealing something critical. The two men had been in a romantic relationship. That information reframed the entire investigation. Once Kylan was identified as a person of interest, detectives moved quickly. They obtained warrants to examine his cell phone records, and what those records revealed was impossible to explain away.
Philadelphia police say they have identified the remains discovered on Kelly Drive last week. Investigators say the victim was 20-year-old Niasir Johnson. His grandmother reported him missing 2 weeks ago and held a vigil in Spring Garden to raise awareness about his disappearance on Saturday. Police found his remains on February 20th off of Kelly Drive. Detectives tell Eyewitness News he'd been once in the neck. The investigation is ongoing.
New information, I should say, this morning about a mystery along Kelly Drive. Police say that they have identified the person whose body was burned, and they found that body more than a week ago. Investigators say the victim is Niasir Johnson, someone found his badly body near Brewery Hill and Kelly Drives in Brewery Town. There have been no arrests in that case. Police hope someone will come forward with information.
Kylan's phone data placed him with Niasir shortly before Niasir's phone went offline for the last time. Even more damning, Kylan's phone also placed him at Fairmount Park near Kelly Drive, the exact location where the burned body had been found. The timeline began to lock into place. With that digital trail, investigators now had reason to believe the unidentified remains could be Niasir Johnson, but given the condition of the body, they needed confirmation. That confirmation would come through DNA. Police contacted Niasir's family with devastating news. They believed they had found his body, but due to the extent of the burns, DNA testing was required to be certain. When the results came back, the truth became undeniable. The body found burned in Fairmount Park was Niasir Johnson. He had been killed days before his 21st birthday. As the investigation deepened, police obtained a search warrant for Kylan Pratt's home on Oxford Street. Inside, they uncovered even more evidence tying him to the crime. Investigators found carpet padding and flooring soaked with blood, later matched to Niasir. Sections of the home showed signs of extensive cleaning attempts, areas where chemicals had been used heavily in an effort to erase what had happened. They also found a bullet hole embedded in the wall, consistent with the firearm used in the killing. While the gun itself was not recovered, forensic analysis linked the evidence to a 9mm semi-automatic firearm. And then there was Kylan's digital footprint. His internet search history revealed searches that went far beyond fear or curiosity. He had searched for content involving psychopathy, violence, killing, and necrophilia, disturbing indicators that suggested the crime was not simply a moment of panic, but something far darker. By June 21, 2022, police arrested Kylan Pratt, formally charging him in the killing of Niasir Johnson. And from that point forward, the case moved through the legal system slowly but deliberately, as prosecutors built a record that reflected not only what happened, but why it mattered. And while the court process unfolded, Niasir's absence was felt every single day. For his family, time did not soften the loss, it sharpened it. Niasir had been the kind of presence that filled a room, laughing easily, checking in often, making people feel seen. After his death, the silence he left behind was overwhelming. His parents, siblings, and loved ones were forced to grieve not just his death, but the violent way in which he was taken from them.
Loved ones turning out tonight to remember a man whose charred remains were found near Kelly Drive last month. And Eddie, you spoke with his family.
Yeah, today would have been Niasir's 21st birthday. They made an emotional cry for justice as they mourn the loss of their loved one. 20-year-old Niasir Johnson was missing for several days before police say his body was discovered in a park off Kelly Drive.
I just want justice, that's all I want, because he didn't deserve what they did to him.
As they came together to celebrate what would have been his 21st birthday, they're hopeful police will find the person responsible for committing such a heinous act.
He started at community college doing business administration, but his ultimate goal was to become a psychologist to help people, because that was just his nature, to help people.
If you know anything, police want to hear from you. You should reach out to homicide detectives, or you can leave an anonymous tip. We have that information on fox29.com. Dawn, back to you.
All right, Eddie, thank you.
They struggled with the reality that his body had been burned so badly they were denied the simple human comfort of seeing him one last time. That loss cut deep. Birthdays became reminders instead of celebrations. Holidays arrived without his voice, his smile, his plans. The future he had been working towards, college, a career in psychology, a life dedicated to helping others, was gone, replaced by a permanent question mark where his life should have continued. and the impact reached beyond his family. Within Philadelphia's LGBTQ+ community, Niasir's death sent a wave of fear and grief. It became a painful reminder that even in 2022, being openly gay, especially as a young black man, could still make someone vulnerable to violence. Vigils were held, names were spoken aloud. Community leaders called attention to the danger of internalized homophobia and the silence that allows it to grow unchecked.
Family members tonight remembered a man who police say was to stop him from revealing his same-sex relationship. Tonight they held a vigil where Niasir Johnson's body was discovered along Kelly Drive in Fairmount Park. Police say in February, Johnson's partner, Kylan Pratt, and Johnson and set the body on fire. Family members say they will continue to seek justice for Johnson.
Niasir's death was not viewed as an isolated act. It was seen as a warning. As the trial finally moved forward, prosecutors laid out the evidence methodically. Digital records, forensic findings, physical proof. Each piece reinforced the same conclusion. This was a calculated killing, followed by deliberate attempts to erase the victim. When the verdict came on September 27, 2024, a Philadelphia jury found Kylan Pratt guilty of first-degree murder, along with abuse of a corpse, tampering with evidence, and possession of an instrument of crime. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus additional time for the related offenses. For Niasir's family, the sentence did not bring closure, but it brought accountability. They spoke about justice not as relief, but as recognition. Recognition that Niasir's life mattered, that his death was not forgotten, that what happened to him was seen, named, and condemned. Still, the impact of his loss remains permanent.
Tonight, one family's message: justice is served. A jury convicting a man of all over romance, and a warning: some of the details of the story may be disturbing to hear.
Cheyenne Corinne is live for us at Philadelphia Police Headquarters. Cheyenne, we heard from the family of the 20-year-old victim tonight. What are they saying?
We did, Sheba, and it was very emotional. But they do have some closure now that the man who and then the body of Niasir Johnson will spend the rest of his life in prison. The family also wanted to make clear that Niasir was not only because he was gay, but also because who he was in a relationship with could not accept his own sexual identity.
Sometimes I just force myself to go to sleep. My heart is so torn in so many pieces.
Since Niasir Johnson was in February of 2022, his family has been pleading and praying for justice.
I couldn't even see him. They wouldn't laid him to rest. I couldn't even see him.
The 20-year-old's body was found along this remote trail in Fairmount Park near Kelly Drive.
This body was the worst body I have ever seen.
Prosecutors say 23-year-old Kylan Pratt Johnson in the neck at his West Philly home, wrapped his body in cloth, drove it to the park, and set him on fire. Pratt was found guilty of first-degree with a mandatory life sentence. Investigators also found disturbing searches on his cell phone, and he was found guilty of other charges, such as abuse of a corpse.
Makes no mistake about it, this was a hate crime.
Pratt was identified as a suspect after detectives received an anonymous tip that also led them to finding out the two men were in a romantic relationship.
We must recognize that this violence isn't random. It is a reflection of deeply rooted, internalized homophobia, queerphobia, and transphobia that impacts all of our communities.
This is an individual who was because he was gay, and because the man who him did not want anyone to find out that he was in a relationship with him or that he had sex with other men.
Johnson's family described the Chad High School graduate who was about to begin college as a person who everyone loved. They say his death is a result of families not accepting their children for who they are, and urges others to unconditionally love how they did Niasir.
He didn't deserve that. And for you to burn his body so we couldn't see him is no amount of forgiveness.
And now the convicted will also have to work in prison to pay Niasir's family nearly $18 $100,000 in restitution. I'm live at police headquarters. I'm Cheyenne Karen, Fox 29 News. Back to you.
Oh, you just feel so terrible for that family. Cheyenne, thank you.
Niasir Johnson will never turn 21. He will never finish the degree he started. He will never become the psychologist he dreamed of being. What remains is his story and the responsibility to tell it truthfully. Because the weight of his death is not measured only by the sentence handed down in a courtroom, but by the lives forever altered in its wake, and by the reminder it leaves behind. No one should have to die for being who they are or loving who they love. What do you think about it? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.